Nobody expected it to escalate this far. What started as a seemingly ordinary moment, just another heated exchange, just another father and son disagreement, suddenly became something that shocked the internet in ways nobody could have predicted. This wasn't a private argument that would be swept under the rug, hidden from view until the tension faded. No, this time it exploded openly, in front of everyone. Social media feeds, entertainment sites, and fan discussions lit up within minutes, each post amplifying what had once been a personal family moment into a public spectacle. The person at the center of this storm was King Harris, T.I.'s son. And for once, King wasn't silent. He stepped out of the shadows that had defined his life for years, the shadow of a father who is not only a parent but a public figure, a hip-hop icon, and a man whose reputation extends far beyond his household. King spoke, and he didn't just speak cautiously or indirectly. No, he went all in, revealing truths that had been kept private, stories that had been confined to family conversations, and moments that nobody outside the Harris inner circle was ever meant to witness. Before that turning point, there was another moment, the one that people can't seem to stop replaying online. Allegedly, things became physical. Reports circulating on social media claim that King Harris was struck after mentioning one name, 50 Cent. That single incident was enough to ignite a frenzy of speculation. But what followed turned this from a simple clash into a full-blown, multi-layered controversy. Instead of retreating or remaining silent after the incident, King reacted differently than anyone expected. He returned louder, angrier, and more determined. The stories he began sharing started to reveal a side of T.I. that few had glimpsed before. Private family details, candid moments, and personal experiences, all aspects of life behind closed doors, were suddenly public. Raw and unfiltered, these revelations forced the internet to ask one overwhelming question: what really happens inside the Harris household? If even half of King's claims are accurate, this isn't merely a father-son disagreement. It's a deeper, long-standing conflict that had been simmering for years. Some reports suggest that the confrontation wasn't solely about disrespect or a comment involving 50 Cent. Instead, it was about control, about family dynamics, and about the pressures King Harris had carried for years without a voice. That physical confrontation acted as a trigger, opening the floodgates for a torrent of pent-up emotions. What followed wasn't just drama. It was a revelation that could affect relationships, reputations, and even legacies within one of the most high-profile families in hip-hop. Once King began speaking, there was no turning back. Every word added fuel to the fire. Every anecdote shared, every moment recalled, painted a more complex, layered picture of life inside the Harris household than the public had previously seen. To fully grasp why this situation resonated so powerfully, it helps to examine the history. This isn't just about one argument or one explosive moment. It's about years of underlying tension slowly building between a father and his son. From the outside, T.I.'s life and family always seemed meticulously controlled. He was the leader, the authority figure, the voice of wisdom and discipline. He wasn't just a father, he was a public persona whose brand revolved around structure, order, and influence. King Harris grew up immersed in that spotlight, not simply as a child, but as an extension of that brand. From the beginning, his actions reflected not just personal choices, but also the weight of representing his father's carefully cultivated image. And therein lay the tension. The challenge of forming an individual identity under the shadow of one of hip-hop's most recognizable figures. Growing up with a parent like T.I. comes with pressures that go beyond normal expectations. There's the pressure to behave correctly, to maintain composure, to uphold the family name, and to avoid publicly embarrassing the household or the brand. Over time, it became clear that King didn't always feel comfortable with this role. Observers noticed subtle signs in interviews and public appearances, moments where he pushed back, casual remarks that hinted at deeper frustration, and an energy that seemed at odds with the polished image T.I. projected. Initially, many brushed these moments off as teenage rebellion or youthful experimentation. "He'll grow out of it," people said. "It's just a phase." But King didn't retreat. As he matured, he became more vocal, carving out a distinct identity separate from his father's shadow. That growing independence marked the beginning of visible tension, as it was no longer merely a parent guiding a child. It was now two strong personalities beginning to clash, each asserting authority in different ways. Then add 50 Cent into the equation, and the situation becomes even more complicated. Anyone familiar with 50 Cent knows he does not operate quietly. He observes, reacts, and throws shots with precision, sometimes humorously, sometimes pointedly. Over the years, T.I. and 50 Cent have had a relationship that was occasionally tense. Subtle jabs, competitive energy, and underlying friction. Nothing explosive initially, but enough to create a backdrop of tension that could ignite if the timing was right. King, growing up amid this tension, absorbed it all. He witnessed his father navigating conflicts, managing reputations, and responding to perceived slights, all while balancing a public image that demanded control. Sources close to the family suggest that King had formed strong opinions about how these situations were handled. He saw the difference between public statements and private actions, and he internalized that disparity. These feelings didn't fade. They accumulated, quietly building a foundation of frustration over time. The alleged physical confrontation, the moment King was reportedly struck after mentioning 50 Cent, wasn't an isolated incident. It was the breaking point of years of simmering tension. That single act triggered a response that could not be ignored. King chose not to retreat. He came forward with stories that revealed a far more complicated reality than anyone had imagined. He spoke of control, image management, and suffocating expectations, describing instances that suggested the flawless family image T.I. had worked to maintain publicly did not always reflect the reality behind closed doors. The reaction online was immediate and intense. Shock, disbelief, support, and skepticism all collided in real time. Some fans rallied behind T.I., framing King's actions as typical adolescent rebellion or questioning the public airing of private matters. Others defended King, praising him for courageously speaking his truth after years of living in the shadow of fame. Many were simply stunned, struggling to comprehend how private family dynamics could spill into public view so dramatically. What makes this story resonate so widely is its universality. Father-son relationships are inherently complex, even under ordinary circumstances. But add fame, money, public scrutiny, and the pressure to maintain a cultural legacy, and those complexities multiply exponentially. When one generation builds its identity around strength, discipline, and authority, while the next seeks autonomy and self-expression, conflict is inevitable. In this case, that conflict unfolded live, in front of the world, leaving no room for privacy or controlled narrative. The King-Harris situation reminds us that even in households with immense public visibility and wealth, the dynamics of family, power, and identity remain intricate and often fraught. It also highlights the struggle of children growing up under the shadow of larger-than-life figures, the constant balancing act between personal truth and public expectation, and the courage it takes to speak out when the world is watching. Ultimately, this isn't just a story about a father and son. It's a story about identity, autonomy, and the collision between private life and public persona. King-Harris's decision to speak out, especially after the alleged physical confrontation, turned what might have been an ordinary family disagreement into a cultural moment, one that has captivated fans, critics, and observers alike. The layers of history, tension, and personal experience make this more than entertainment. It's a real-time look at what happens when private frustrations meet public scrutiny. And as this story continues to unfold, the world is left watching, analyzing, and debating. There's no resolution yet, only the stark reminder that sometimes, even the most carefully managed images cannot contain the complexity of human relationships. King Harris has stepped into the light, and in doing so, he has reshaped the conversation around family, fame, and authenticity. T.I. has spent years positioning himself as a mentor, a leader, and a voice of reason in the culture. King's revelations challenge that narrative directly. They force people to ask whether the public image matches the private reality. They also raise questions about loyalty, respect, and what happens when a child no longer wants to be an extension of their parents' brand. As the story continues to unfold, the internet remains fixated on every new detail. Old interviews are being re-examined. Old posts are being resurfaced. People are trying to piece together the timeline and figure out exactly what led to that physical moment and the explosive aftermath. The bigger question hanging over everything is whether this is a temporary family blow-up that will eventually be resolved behind closed doors, or whether it marks a permanent shift in the relationship between King Harris and T.I. right now. The public only has fragments: King's angry revelations, the initial smack allegation, and the stunned reactions from fans and observers. The full story is still emerging. What is already clear is that this situation has gone far beyond a simple argument. It has exposed cracks in one of hip-hop's most visible family dynamics. It has forced conversations about generational differences, the pressure of fame on children, and the difficulty of maintaining control when the next generation demands to be heard on their own terms. King Harris stepping out and speaking his truth has changed the conversation. Whether people agree with his method or not, the fact that he refused to stay silent has made it impossible for the issues to be swept under the rug. The internet is watching, analyzing, and waiting to see what happens next. Because once private family pain becomes public, there is no easy way to put it back in the box. The revelations have already damaged the carefully crafted image. The only question left is how much more will come out, and whether father and son can find a way to repair what has been broken, or whether this moment will permanently redefine their relationship in the eyes of the world. For now, the internet remains divided, the family remains in the spotlight, and the story continues to unfold in real time. What started as a heated exchange has become something much larger, a very public reckoning with legacy, control, and the complicated bond between a famous father and his outspoken son. Before this whole situation exploded into public view, there were already subtle moments that hinted something wasn't right beneath the surface. Clips of tense arguments surfaced online, awkward exchanges caught on camera, and instances where T.I. had to correct or redirect King Harris in front of others. While some viewers saw these as typical parenting, others began asking a deeper question. Why does this feel different? It didn't come across as ordinary father-son friction. It felt layered, as if things were being said without being spoken aloud, as if long-standing issues were simmering just below the surface. Then social media entered the picture and everything became amplified. Every look, every word, every micro-reaction was dissected and shared instantly. What might have remained a private family matter in the past now played out in public within seconds. That was exactly what happened here. By the time the alleged smack occurred, the tension wasn't new or sudden. It had been building steadily, waiting for the right spark to set it off. That moment became the spark. But here's what many people didn't fully understand at the time. It wasn't the beginning of the conflict. It was the breaking point, the visible result of everything that had been accumulating behind the scenes for years. Once that line was crossed, King Harris didn't just react with raw emotion. He responded with something deeper, something that made it crystal clear this wasn't only about what happened in that single instant. It was about everything that had led up to it. The moment it happened, everything changed. There was no warning, no slow build-up, just a split-second incident that transformed simmering tension into something explosive. According to what is circulating online, King Harris said something about 50 Cent, and that's when the situation crossed a line. Nobody fully agrees on the exact words spoken. Some call it disrespect. Others insist it was simply an honest opinion. But everyone agrees on what followed. Things allegedly got physical, and the internet became convinced that T.I. smacked him. Whether the details match exactly how people are describing them is still debated, but the reaction was immediate and visceral. Clips spread rapidly. Voices were raised. People reacted in real time as if they couldn't believe what they were witnessing, because this was no longer a private family disagreement. It had become painfully public, and the energy shifted in an instant. Instead of backing down or letting the moment pass, King snapped back, not physically but verbally, and what he said next changed everything. He didn't just argue. He began revealing things right there in the heat of the moment, personal details that felt too intimate to be aired publicly, comments that made viewers pause and think, wait, did he really just say that? He called out certain behaviors, hinted at patterns that didn't match the polished public image of T.I., and suggested that what the world sees is not the full story. You could hear the weight in his voice. This wasn't fresh anger from a single incident. This was built-up frustration, years of it finally breaking free. As the clip spread like wildfire, people started analyzing more than just the words. They examined how T.I. reacted. For the first time, some fans noticed something different in him. Less composed, less calculated, more visibly emotional. That threw people off because T.I. is known for maintaining control, for being strategic and always aware of how he presents himself. In this moment, that famous composure appeared to slip. Once viewers saw that crack, the questions multiplied. What pushed things this far? What was really said before the cameras rolled? What has been happening behind closed doors all this time? The situation escalated even further after that initial moment. King didn't go silent or retreat. He went online and doubled down. He posted, spoke out, and reacted in ways that kept the fire burning. In those posts and statements, he began hinting at deeper issues, how he had been treated, things that happened in private, and small pieces of information that didn't explain everything, but added just enough fuel to keep the public locked in and speculating. The internet was no longer reacting to a single heated moment. It was trying to decode an entire hidden story. The more people watched and reread the posts, the more it felt deliberate. It seemed as though King had been waiting for the right moment to finally release what he had been holding inside for years. When that moment arrived, he didn't hesitate. One detail that started circulating quietly at first, then louder, shifted the narrative dramatically. This wasn't the first time something like this had happened. Again, there is no official confirmation, but multiple people began saying the same thing. This isn't new. That single realization turned everything upside down. The conversation was no longer about one isolated incident. It became about a possible pattern. And once people start thinking in terms of patterns, everything gets re-examined. Old clips, old interviews, and old family moments that once seemed insignificant now feel loaded with meaning, like hidden clues waiting to be interpreted. Just when it seemed the chaos couldn't intensify, King hinted at something nobody saw coming. He suggested that the trigger involving 50 Cent wasn't simply about disrespect. There was something deeper behind the reaction, something that hadn't been fully explained yet. If that's true, then the smack, the argument, and the public explosion were only the surface level. What King was about to reveal next had the potential to completely change how people viewed the entire situation. After the initial posts and viral clips, after the internet had already chosen sides, King Harris took it even further. He went live with no warning, no filters, and no intention of holding back. The energy was completely different this time. This wasn't raw, impulsive anger anymore. It was calculated frustration, the kind that builds when someone has been carrying a heavy weight in silence for far too long. The moment King Harris spoke, the internet shook. His first words, "I'm done protecting people who don't protect me," hit like a thunderclap, signaling a deliberate decision to stop shielding others at the expense of his own truth. It was a statement heavy with meaning, a young man drawing a line after years of navigating life in the shadow of his father, T.I., and then he began to speak. Not with exhaustive detail, but with enough clarity and emotion to make the stakes unmistakable. He touched on control, expectations, family image, and the immense pressure of growing up as the son of a larger-than-life figure. Through his words, the audience glimpsed a private reality that didn't always align with the public narrative of a strong, unified family. Viewers could sense the tension that had been building for years. This wasn't a teenager rebelling for attention. It was a young man who had reached a point where silence had become costlier than speaking out. The live session didn't resolve the conflict, but it opened floodgates. Old events were revisited, private dynamics questioned, and speculation spread like wildfire. People began asking, how much of the family image carefully curated for the cameras reflected reality? How much was shaped for public consumption, while the true story remained hidden behind closed doors? What started as a father-son disagreement evolved into a public examination of legacy, authority, and generational expectations. T.I. has built his career on discipline, leadership, and family strength, values that define not only his music but his persona. King's revelations challenge that image directly. Whether one agrees with his method or not, speaking out has made it impossible to ignore the cracks. The internet is now watching every development, dissecting every statement, and waiting to see if T.I. will respond publicly. Adding 50 Cent into the mix complicated matters further. The long-standing tension between T.I. and 50 Cent is part of hip-hop history, with subtle jabs and competitive energy simmering for years. When King referenced him, intentionally or not, it merged a private family conflict with a wider public rivalry. The fact that a single name could trigger such a reaction suggests the issues run deeper than disrespect. They touch on control, loyalty, and the weight of familial and cultural expectations. Reactions online have been chaotic. Supporters praise King's courage in speaking his truth, framing it as an act of self-determination and authenticity. Others defend T.I., arguing that parenting is inherently messy and publicizing private issues only magnifies them. Social media comment sections have become battlegrounds where timelines are dissected, old interviews scrutinized, and every snippet treated as evidence. Beyond entertainment, the debate now encompasses broader cultural questions. How should children of celebrities define themselves? When does familial loyalty become a form of silence that enables unhealthy patterns? And when does a child's right to speak override the carefully constructed public image of a parent? King's words challenged T.I.'s public persona, one built on authority, wisdom, and mentorship. Suddenly, the man fans admired was being seen through a different lens, complicated by private tensions his child chose to expose. The contrast between public perception and private reality sparked widespread fascination and controversy, forcing the audience to confront a more nuanced truth about family dynamics under the microscope of fame. Meanwhile, 50 Cent's subtle interventions keep the situation alive. He doesn't name names, but his timing and choice of words suggest awareness of the broader story and its stakes. His cryptic posts, like hints that family business always comes out eventually, serve as reminders that personal disputes in hip-hop rarely stay private. When someone of 50 Cent's stature enters the narrative, even indirectly, the stakes are heightened and the public attention intensifies. Insiders hint that King has not yet revealed everything. According to these sources, additional details, beyond family dynamics, could link to other people and situations not previously connected publicly. Cryptic comments, including statements like, "I haven't even said the real reason yet," fuel speculation that further revelations may dramatically shift the narrative. If King chooses to continue speaking, the story could escalate in unforeseen ways. At this point, the story is accelerating. King shows no signs of retreating. T.I. remains largely silent, creating a vacuum that the internet fills with theory, speculation, and analysis. Every new clip, post, or rumor has the potential to alter the narrative. What began as a single incident, the alleged slap after King mentioned 50 Cent, has grown into a highly public reckoning, one that examines generational expectations, control, legacy, and the pressures of growing up in constant public view. The stakes are both personal and cultural. King Harris stepping forward highlights the difficulty of being a child of fame, where identity is often overshadowed by parental success, and mistakes or conflicts are magnified by public scrutiny. His act of speaking out is not only a bid for personal agency, but also a challenge to norms around image, silence, and familial reputation in celebrity culture. This situation has transformed the conversation from a family disagreement into a broader exploration of fame, truth-telling, and generational accountability. People are no longer simply debating who is right or wrong. They are analyzing systemic pressures, the impact of social media on family life, and how public personas can obscure private realities. The tension between King's emerging voice and T.I.'s carefully managed image reflects deeper cultural questions about power, privilege, and the consequences of living life in the spotlight. The internet remains captivated. Some audiences celebrate King's courage, viewing his revelations as necessary transparency. Others defend T.I., emphasizing parental authority and the sanctity of family privacy. And still, a third group waits, anticipating further developments that may shift allegiances, interpretations, and public perception yet again. Every new clip, tweet, or statement has the potential to transform the narrative once more. Ultimately, this is not just a story about one alleged slap or one heated argument. It is a window into the complexities of family, fame, and identity under the intense scrutiny of public life. King Harris has refused to remain silent, forcing both his father and the public to confront realities previously hidden. The unspoken has been spoken, and the private is now undeniably public. What comes next? Further revelations from King, a public response from T.I., or quiet efforts at reconciliation, will shape not only the legacy of the Harris family, but also broader conversations about parenting, fame, and autonomy in the modern age. One thing is certain, the story is far from over. The internet is watching, the insiders are waiting, and each move could drastically shift the narrative. What began as a private dispute has evolved into a multi-layered cultural moment that examines family, fame, and generational tension in real time. The moment King stepped forward, everything hanged. And whatever unfolds next, the Harris family drama has already left an indelible mark on public perception, hip-hop culture, and the conversation around children navigating life under the shadow of celebrity.